studies? I mean,
It could be, especially if you could get them to talk about why they tag. Which has been a little under-researched.
Sorry, trying to get hooked up.
Oh, you need a microphone.
This?
That's not a microphone. Shake it off.
Yes, please.
Sorry. Distracting.
It would be interesting though to see the power taggers, to see how complex their tags are in relation to others. I mean, whereas you have one person, tagging health, and then somebody else tagging something that's completely, just more descriptive or more relevant for the website. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. You could probably identify people, maybe social network analysis or something like that, to identify which people are, I guess, closer to the center.
I would see those power taggers are the ones who do 100 tags.
Yeah, well, you could also do that. I should go back and see if that person is still tagging, if they're still using so many. I don't have the patience for that, but...
Okay, good.
They have the patience for that.
I was surprised, and they weren't all the same word either. Actually, like I said, I thought it was a mistake. In fact, I just assumed it was a mistake. So I went and looked. Couldn't believe it.
Those 100 tag ones, what sort of things showed up? Because it almost sounds like a miniature abstract right there when you've got that many tags. I mean, did it look like they were trying to make complete sentences out of it? Or?
I don't remember that example in particular, but terms like the and do show up very high in the popularity list on Site You Like. So it's obvious some people are typing in whole sentences or even abstracts. I don't think you don't notice that quite as much with the listers. I think because there's so many people using it in comparison that these terms are being kind of filtered down. But you're quite right, some people they're either missing the point of tagging or they're trying to do something different that isn't really, supported by tagging. They're saying, well, a handful of subject headings aren't enough for me, so I'm going to put in a whole sentence. But tagging doesn't really support that very well. It assumes you're going to pick a handful of words and, type those in the box.
Okay.
But yeah, you definitely see that. I was kind of surprised when I first saw it, but then I realized that was what people were doing. They were actually trying to assign a phrase as a label. They actually recommend that for passwords, so maybe it's good for identifying articles too.
More questions? Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Next, we have a very brief report from a MLIS student. How you are not graduated yet?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay. He went to this past summer's ALA in Washington, D.C. So he's going to give us a brief report on what he did there and what he saw. And he sent me a PowerPoint slide presentation. I have it on screen here. Todd, I assume you cannot see us, can you?
No, I can't.
Yeah, okay. So when you need me to move on to the next slide, just let me know. Now on screen, it's your first slide with you. I assume that's you in the picture.
Yes, that's me doing some recreational reading.
And Berber. So
yes.
Everybody can hear him well. Yeah. Okay, good, excellent. So go ahead.
Okay, great, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the Information Organization Research Group for providing me with the support to attend ALA this past summer. I thought I'd start by giving you a little bit more background about myself. As Shirley said, I'm a student at SOIS. Distance, obviously. I currently live in Missoula, Montana. I did a good chunk of my undergraduate work at UWM, though, so I can sort of picture the surroundings that you're in. I don't know, are you in Bolton Hall right now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I took many classes in Bolton Hall, because I took a lot of geography classes, some economics classes while I was there. I started the MLIS program in fall 2009, and I sort of put myself on the fast track to graduate this December. Before I started the program, I didn't have any library work experience, and it was the core class 511 that really got me interested in information organization, particularly the subject of subject analysis, because it was described in one of our textbooks as something that computers can't do adequately yet, and I sort of aspired to do something that computers can't do. So that's part of the reason I got interested in it. And so decided to take more of the cataloging courses, and I currently am a volunteer for the catalogers at the University of Montana, and I've been doing that since March of this year. Okay, next slide. Day 0. This is Wednesday before the conference actually started. I say that this is the day I've told most of my friends and family about, because if I start to talk about library stuff, they'll just ask me what I'm going to do about the Dewey Decimal System. But everybody likes to talk about travel experiences, so I'll talk briefly about mine just because it was terrible. I was supposed to have one connection in Minneapolis to get from Missoula to DC, but there were mechanical problems in Minneapolis, so I had to fly to Indianapolis, then to Detroit, where there was lightning and a tornado warning, so that flight was delayed. So I ended up getting to sleep at 3:30 in the morning before the pre-conference the next day. Next slide. The pre-conference cataloging and description of cartographic resources, this was really my main motivation for going to the conference. I learned about this pre-conference and also about the conference attendance support from the research group within about a span of about 24 hours. And so those two circumstances made me look into it further. I hadn't expected to be able to either afford to go or be interested enough in going to attend ALA this year. But part of my motivation was that at the University of Montana, their cataloging backlog consists largely of maps, and it didn't seem like anyone there was particularly interested in doing them, so I have a pretty strong background in geography, so it's an area of interest of mine, so I decided that I'd go to this conference, and when I get back, I'd be able to apply what I learned immediately by tackling this backlog. Next slide. So day 2, the pre-conference continued in the morning, and it really was very helpful, and I was able to apply the things I learned immediately. In the afternoon, I went to a orientation for Catalogers Desktop, partly because I wanted to see the Library of Congress while I was there. I was sort of hoping that this presentation would be more about the content of Catalogers Desktop, since I'm sort of a newbie to all the vast array of cataloging resources, but it's more about the functionality of it, which was useful as well. Then that evening, went to Alex 101, because when I signed up for ALA, I decided to sign up for Alex as well. And at this event, got an introduction to the different sections of Alex. I think it was hosted by the new members interest group, specifically for people like me who aren't familiar yet with Alex. So I got a lot of good information and learned who to contact if I, in the future, am interested in joining any of those sections. Next slide.
Alex is the Association of Library Collections and Technical Services, a division of ALA. Go ahead.
All right, thanks. So Saturday, this is sort of the start of the conference proper. In the morning, I went to sort of the basic orientation for first-time attendees. That's the New Members Roundtable Conference Orientation. I learned a little bit, but I would have been fine probably sleeping in that morning. After that, I went to a cataloging discussion group, and here I sort of learned that it's good to pay close attention to the acronyms that are attached to the events, because this was sponsored, well, it was sponsored by the Association of College and Research Libraries, but more specifically by the Western Europeans Studies section. So I learned a little bit more about Western European language cataloging than I expected. But what actually happened is that they spent the majority of the time talking about cataloging in a more general sense, so I did, and that's what I was hoping to hear, just to see what people out in the field are actually talking about regarding cataloging. So that was pretty useful. They actually did talk about the sort of skills that they're looking for entry-level catalogers, which is what I'm hoping to be upon graduation in December. Then later that day, I went to see GIS, that stands for Geographic Information Systems. As I mentioned earlier, geography is another interest of mine. And I've been telling people that my plan B, if I don't find a cataloging job, is to try to get a job as a map and GIS librarian. So that's probably the reason why I went to this session. And it actually ended up being useful for the research methods class I took this summer, because I wrote a research proposal that was related to the implementation of a GIS in an academic library. Next slide. This was my last day at the conference, Sunday. I decided I couldn't afford to stay any longer than that. In the morning, I went to the very crowded session called Cataloging and Beyond, the Year of Cataloging Research. I suppose what might be memorable about this is that I don't recall any bold statements being made by the speakers. It was informative and interesting, but it's got a sort of a bold name, the Year of Cataloging Research, or Cataloging Research, so I was sort of expecting proclamations in line with that. Next, I went to Strategic Future of Print Collections in Research Libraries. This is another example of checking the acronyms. I can't remember exactly what acronym was associated with this, but it's related to preservation, whereas I was sort of hoping that it'd be more along the lines of collection management, what are the future of what print collections will be added in the future as opposed to digital collections, and the nature of the hybrid collection in academic libraries. Then my final event that I went to was a joint discussion group meeting. So it was the GIS discussion group and the map collection management discussion group. And what I learned there was sort of very similar to what I learned at the GIS in every library, where I learned sort of what the possibilities are for the offering of GIS services in libraries. And that just about wraps up. So final slide. I'd like to thank everybody again for giving me the support to attend the conference, and what you see is my badge, my UW-Milwaukee addition to it.
Anybody questions for Todd?
What would Todd advise the next person doing this?
Did you hear?
Do differently?
I know I didn't quite catch it.
What would you advise the next person to do when they go to ALA conference? Next student.
Okay.
Or if Todd had to do over, how would you do it differently then?
Or if you were to do it over, how would you do it differently?
I would fly in a more reliable airline, so my experience would be a better start, first of all.
Good advice.
It actually did kind of throw me off because I couldn't get oriented before getting there, but obviously I didn't have much control over that. I guess I briefly mentioned that paying attention, if someone is interested in very specific things and is sort of not sure what the scope of a particular event will be, like I said, looking at the acronyms I think can be very helpful. little more closely. Yeah, if I had gotten there earlier, I would have, oriented myself a little more beforehand. I had planned to walk around, a little more and find out, where shuttle bus stops are and the like. And I think, I took a little bit of advice that I read online prior to going, that, as you notice, I went to basically 3 big sessions each day, so I had left one of the, I always had a couple-hour block to take a break and just check out the vendors and stuff like that, so I think that is also a good thing for people to do.
Thank you, Todd.
All right, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
This?
Yeah.
This is new. Thank you very much for coming, and we probably don't have much time. Margaret, you have a class, right? Oh, not today. Okay.
That was yesterday. That's why I wanted to do this today.
Okay. So our iWork will meet and talk a little bit. The students are welcome to give us some suggestions for future events, for example, or how you like to participate in the group. So we don't need a recording for this session. Thank you very much. We can probably, I don't know some of you, so I